For more than half a century, humanity stayed close to home. After the last Apollo mission in 1972, no human traveled beyond Earth's orbit again. Not because we lost the knowledge, but because deep space is unforgiving, expensive, and relentlessly hostile to life. The silence beyond low Earth orbit became normal. Generations grew up knowing spaceflight as something robotic, distant, and safe by comparison. Artemis changed that. Leaving Earth's orbit is not just a longer trip. It is crossing a boundary. Earth is wrapped in an invisible shield, a magnetic bubble that deflects radiation and softens the violence of the sun. Inside it, astronauts can be rescued. Outside it, they cannot. Once a spacecraft passes that boundary, help is days away, sometimes farther than that. Artemis exists to push humans back across that line and to see whether we are still capable of surviving there. This mission is often compared to Apollo, but the comparison hides more than it reveals. Apollo was a sprint, driven by urgency and politics. Engineers accepted enormous risks because the goal was simple and short-lived: land, plant a flag, return. Artemis is not about a single moment. It is about endurance. Instead of brief visits, the mission architecture aims toward repeated journeys, longer stays, and eventually a permanent human presence beyond Earth. The moon is no longer a destination. It is a proving ground. At the center of Artemis is a question that sounds simple, but is anything but. Can humans still operate safely in deep space? Every system had to be relearned. Life support must function flawlessly for days without resupply. Navigation must work far beyond the GPS network that quietly guides modern spacecraft. Communication delays stretch conversations into fragments. Even sleep becomes harder when Earth is no longer filling the windows. The spacecraft itself represents a reset. New software, new heat shields, new propulsion systems. During uncrewed testing, some of these systems showed how narrow the margins still are. Heat shields cracked in unexpected ways. Components behaved differently after long exposure to radiation. None of these issues were catastrophic, but they were reminders that space does not forgive assumptions. The environment has not become safer since Apollo. If anything, our tolerance for failure has shrunk. Beyond Earth's magnetic protection, radiation becomes a constant companion. Invisible particles from the sun and distant cosmic events pass through spacecraft walls and human tissue alike. Artemis does not solve this problem. It confronts it. Sensors measure exposure. Shielding reduces risk, but never eliminates it. Every hour outside Earth's protective bubble adds to a lifetime dose that no astronaut can undo. This is one of the hidden prices of exploration. Before humans were placed aboard, the spacecraft made the journey alone. An uncrewed flight carried the same capsule and rocket around the moon and back, testing heat shields, propulsion, and navigation in real deep space. It returned successfully, but not perfectly. The data it sent home revealed how narrow the margins still are, and how little room there is for error once lives are added to the equation. Then there is the human factor. Isolation in deep space is different from isolation in orbit. Earth is no longer a nearby presence. It shrinks into a fragile sphere hanging in blackness. For the crew, that shift is psychological as much as physical. There are no emergency returns, no quick fixes. Every decision carries weight because mistakes cannot be reversed easily. Artemis forces humans to operate with that knowledge, not as a thought experiment, but as lived reality. Why return to the moon at all? Because it is close enough to forgive failure and distant enough to matter. Mars remains the long-term dream, but Mars is months away, with no realistic rescue options and far harsher constraints. The moon sits in between. It offers partial gravity, extreme temperature swings, long nights, and valuable resources locked in shadowed craters. Water ice, if accessed reliably, can become oxygen, drinking water, and rocket fuel. The moon turns exploration from a one-way expense into something closer to an ecosystem. Artemis also reflects how space exploration has changed politically and economically. Unlike Apollo, this is not a single-agency effort. It depends on international partners and private companies, each bringing different priorities and constraints. Some systems are government-built, designed for reliability over decades. Others are commercial, optimized for iteration and speed. The mission exists at the intersection of these philosophies, balancing caution against innovation. That balance is fragile, and the consequences of getting it wrong are severe. The rocket that carries Artemis is among the most powerful ever built. Yet power alone does not guarantee success. Complexity grows with ambition. Every stage separation, every engine ignition, every software handoff introduces another opportunity for failure. Spaceflight is still a chain that breaks at its weakest link. Artemis does not escape that reality. It embraces it and moves forward anyway. What makes Artemis different from past missions is not just where it goes, but what it represents. It is not a promise of easy progress or rapid expansion. It is a test of whether the lessons of Apollo were preserved or merely remembered, a test of whether modern systems, despite their sophistication, can perform under the same pressures faced decades ago, a test of whether human presence beyond Earth is still a priority, or simply a story we tell ourselves. Success does not mean perfection. It means learning. Every anomaly, every unexpected behavior feeds forward into the next mission. Failure, too, carries meaning. It reshapes budgets, timelines, and public confidence. In that sense, Artemis carries weight beyond its immediate goals. It influences whether future missions are attempted at all. When humans last left Earth's orbit, the world was different. Computers filled rooms. Satellites were rare. Spaceflight was new and raw. Today, technology surrounds daily life, yet deep space remains as hostile as ever. Artemis exposes that contrast. It shows how advanced we have become and how little that matters once Earth is far behind. This mission does not guarantee a future on the moon or on Mars or beyond. What it does guarantee is clarity. It reveals the true cost of leaving home. It shows whether humanity is willing to accept that cost again, not for a moment of triumph, but for the long, uncertain work of exploration. Artemis is not the end of a journey, nor the beginning of a simple one. It is a return to a question that was left unanswered for decades. Not whether we can reach deep space, but whether we are prepared to stay there.